Hi Guy, tonight we journey back to the Joseon dynasty, to a moonlit courtyard where shadows dance and secrets whisper. You are Yuseon, a street dancer, known for your quick feet and even quicker temper. A thief is attempting to break into the village school, threatening the community's precious books. This brazen act forces you, while on night patrol, to confront the culprit, with consequences that will ripple through the village. You probably won't survive this night patrol unscathed, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and the local time. I check the comments, and it's crazy seeing people from all over the world on the same video. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Chapter 1, Whispers in the Moonlight. You trudge through the silent courtyard of the village school, the wooden benches cold beneath your bare feet. The scent of pine and damp earth hangs heavy in the air. You're on night patrol, a task assigned to you due to your reputation for honesty, if not always patience. Honestly, you think the village elder just wanted a night of peace and quiet without you arguing about the price of rice cakes in the market. Tonight, the air feels thick with unspoken tension, the kind that prickles the hairs on your arms. Your usual route feels different, the shadows deeper, the silence louder. As you round the corner, you see a figure hunched over near the school's main building. A quick glance reveals that he's attempting to pry open a window. You instantly recognize this as none other than Choi Song, a known river boatman with a questionable reputation. Your heart pounds. This is the thief you are supposed to catch. He's surprisingly clumsy. The wooden bar he's using as a lever slips with a loud fort-come difference a drac against the wall, followed by a string of muttered curses that are both impressively creative and entirely too loud for someone attempting a clandestine activity. For a moment you just stand there, hidden by the deep shadow of an old ginkgo tree, utterly baffled. Choi-sang? The friendly, stubborn boatman who always has a joke and a piece of dried fish for the local kids? It doesn't make sense. He tries again, jamming the bar into the window frame and putting his shoulder into it. The wood groans in protest. A small, pathetic cracking sound echoes in the night. He's making more noise than a blacksmith with hiccups. You can hear him grumbling to himself. Stubborn piece of just open for my daughter. The words are faint, carried on the breeze, but you catch them. For his daughter? Asterisk. Now you're even more confused. You know his daughter, a bright little girl who loves the stories the schoolmaster tells. This is a crime, yes, but it feels sad. Pathetic, even. Your mind races. The hot-tempered part of you, the part that earns you your reputation, wants to leap out and scream at him. What in the name of the ancestors are you doing, you oaf? Asterisk. But the shy, quieter part of you, the part that hates confrontation unless you're already past the boiling point, just wants the ground to swallow you whole. Then there's the honest part. The reason you're here. That part knows you can't just walk away. You look at the garden beside the schoolhouse, the neat rows of chrysanthemums your cousin Park Yong tends with such love. He pours his optimistic soul into this place, believing it brings good fortune and focus to the students. Seeing Choi Sang about to violate that space makes your blood simmer. This isn't just wood and paper he's trying to steal. He's chipping away at the heart of the village. You take a silent step forward, your bare feet making no sound on the packed earth. You have options. You could scream, raise the alarm, and have half the village here in minutes. Choi Sang would be disgraced, maybe even exiled. Or you could handle this yourself. You are, after all, a street dancer. You're light on your feet and quicker than anyone you know. You could probably disarm him before he even knew you were there. He's a strong boatman, but he's focused, and, well, let's be honest, he's not exactly the pinnacle of grace right now. He gives the window another mighty heave. There's a sharp donun crack. A piece of the wooden lattice breaks and clatters to the ground. Choi Sang freezes, his head whipping around, eyes wide with panic in the moonlight. He scans the darkness, listening. Your heart is a drum against your ribs. He hasn't seen you. Not yet. You press yourself flatter against the ginkgo tree, your breath held tight in your chest. This is it. The moment of decision. Do you become the village hero or the quiet arbiter of a desperate man's fate? You feel the familiar heat rising in your neck, and you know, whatever happens next, quiet isn't going to be your strong suit. The moment hangs, stretched thin and brittle like old parchment. Choi Sang's panicked eyes dart through the darkness, searching for the source of the sound, for the witness to his crime. He sees nothing but familiar shadows. Your heart is a wild bird beating against your ribs, not with fear, but with a strange, surging energy. The shy part of you that dreaded this moment has vanished, burned away by the white-hot flame of your temper. This isn't just about a thief and some stolen books anymore. This is about Choi Sung, the man who jokes with children, defiling the one place in the village dedicated to their future. It's about him stomping on the hope your cousin Park Yong cultivates in his garden with every sunrise. The injustice of it all coils in your stomach like a snake. Honesty demands you act. Your temper dictates how. You don't shout. A scream would be clumsy, an admission of surprise. You are not surprised, you are insulted. Instead, you move. All those years of practice, of endless drills on dusty festival grounds, of learning to command every muscle and sinew, now serve you in the silent dark. You push off from the rough bark of the ginkgo tree, a shadow detaching itself from a greater darkness. Your bare feet, calloused and sensitive, find the rhythm of the earth. You don't run, you flow. One step, two, a third, each one placed with the silent precision of a dance step. You are a whisper of movement, a blur in the periphery. You let him see you, not with a sudden leap, but by simply stopping. You halt your fluid advance in a small patch of moonlight filtering through the leaves, your form suddenly coalescing from the gloom. You stand there, arms crossed, your expression unreadable, but radiating a heat he can feel even from 10 paces away. For a heartbeat, Choi Sung doesn't understand what he's seeing. His mind, scrambled by guilt and fear, struggles to process your presence. He squints. Is it a spirit? A trick of the moon? Then recognition dawns, and is followed by a wave of pure, unadulterated terror. The friendly boatman evaporates. In his place is a cornered animal. His eyes widen, his mouth opens in a silent, quote, "oh" of disbelief. The heavy wooden bar slips from his sweaty fingers and clatters onto the stone path with a sound that seems to shatter the night. "You Sion!" He chokes out, your name a strangled gasp, and then he runs. There is no thought, no hesitation. He spins on his heel, his powerful legs churning, and bolts toward the far side of the courtyard, away from the school, away from you. A raw, startled yell is torn from his throat as he flees, a sound of pure panic that echoes off the wooden schoolhouse walls. You are on him in an instant. The chase is not a question. It is an instinct. Your dancer's body uncoils like a spring. The balls of your feet barely seem to touch the ground as you launch yourself into pursuit. The cool night air rushes past your face, whipping your hair back. In this moment, the courtyard is your stage, and this is a frantic, desperate dance. Choi Sang is fast. Years of hauling ropes and pulling his boat against the Nakdong's current have given him a brute strength and a surprising burst of speed. He hurtles through the open space, his one goal to reach the low wall at the edge of the school grounds and scramble over it into the anonymity of the village lanes. He cuts a straight, desperate line. But you don't run in straight lines. You see the world in angles and arcs, in paths of least resistance. He barrels toward a long wooden bench, clearly intending to vault it. His approach is clumsy, his desperation making him reckless. You see his path, and you see a better one. While he's still 3 strides away from the bench, you veer to the left, your body low to the ground. You slide across the polished surface of another bench, the wood cool and smooth beneath your hand, using its length to propel you forward and cut the angle. You land on the other side, light as a cat, having shaved precious seconds off the pursuit. Choi Sang glances over his shoulder, his eyes wide with disbelief to see you so much closer, already past the obstacle he was about to face. A flicker of despair crosses his face. He's running from a ghost. He swerves, abandoning his path to the wall, and plunges toward the darker, more cluttered side of the courtyard, toward the trees and your cousin's meticulously kept garden. A terrible choice. You know this ground better than you know the lines on your own hand. As he crashes through the low hedge bordering the garden, the sharp scent of crushed chrysanthemum leaves rises into the air, a green, bitter perfume of violation. The smell hits you like a physical blow, stoking the fire in your chest. He just destroyed a piece of Park Young's optimism. Now this is personal. You don't follow him through the hedge. You leap over it. A clean, soaring arc in the moonlight, your legs tucked beneath you. You land silently in the soft soil of a flower bed, careful to plant your feet in the narrow space between the rows of autumn blooms. You can feel the soft earth give way slightly, a stark contrast to the hard-packed dirt of the yard. Choi Sang, meanwhile, is stumbling through the garden like a runaway ox. He trips on a decorative rock, catching himself on a stake meant to support a heavy-headed peony. You hear the snap of wood, the rustle of damaged foliage. He's leaving a trail of destruction, a scar on this place of peace. The chase weaves between the ancient pine trees now. The moonlight is fractured here, a dizzying strobe of silver and black. It's a true game of cat and mouse. He uses the thick trunks to try and break your line of sight, darting left, then right, hoping to confuse you. But he doesn't understand. You don't need to see him constantly. You listen, you feel, you anticipate. You are a dancer. You understand rhythm, even the frantic, arrhythmic beat of a man in flight. You hear the scuff of his straw shoe on a root, the sharp intake of his breath as he changes direction. You don't follow his path. You intercept it. You cut between two close-set pines, a gap he would have to slow for, and emerge on his flank. He gasps as he sees you, not behind him, but beside him, matching him stride for a terrifying second. He pushes off a tree trunk, trying to gain space, his breath coming in ragged, ugly sobs. He's a boatman, powerful in his arms and torso, but his lungs are burning. He is not built for this kind of sustained, frantic running. You, however, feel a strange sense of clarity. Your breathing is deep and controlled, your heart rate high but steady. This is what your body is trained for. Explosive bursts of energy, sustained grace under pressure. While he is fighting the ground, you are working with it. You use a slight incline to gain momentum. You push off a stone to pivot without losing speed. Every feature of the courtyard is an aid to you, an unwilling partner in your dance of pursuit. The gap between you closes. 5 paces. 3. 1. You can hear his breath tearing in and out of his lungs. You can smell the sweat of his fear, mingled with the scent of the river that always clings to him. He is fading, his powerful strides shortening, becoming heavy, leaden. He risks one last look over his shoulder, his face a pale, ghostly mask in the moonlight. His eyes are no longer just frightened, they are pleading. He sees you, a relentless shadow, and he knows it's over. His foot catches on an exposed root he's too exhausted to see. He pitches forward with a cry of despair, not of pain. It's the final, clumsy misstep. This is your moment. You don't need to lunge or tackle him. Your dance is more elegant than that. As he stumbles, you flow past him, a blur of motion. You spin, a tight, controlled pirouette on the ball of one foot, your momentum carrying you around to face him as he struggles to regain his balance. He looks up, his chest heaving, and finds you standing directly in his path, blocking his escape. You are not even breathing hard. You simply stand there, the hunter whose chase has ended. His desperate flight slams to a halt against the immovable object of your presence. He is caught. Your hand rises, not in a fist, but with an open palm, and you are close enough to feel the heat radiating from his panicked body. The entire world seems to shrink to this single, breathless point in time, under the silent, watchful eye of the moon. Your hand hangs in the air between you, a silent command to halt. Choi Sang, his chest rising and falling like a broken bellows, stares at it. He is trapped. The thick stone wall of the village well is at his back, and you are before him, an impassable barrier of quiet fury. The moonlight paints your face in harsh lines, carving out the anger in your brow and the grim set of your mouth. For a long moment, the only sounds are his ragged gasps and the distant chirping of a cricket, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the courtyard. He finally finds his voice. Not the friendly baritone you know from the river, but a raspy, desperate thing. "Siana," he pleads, using the familiar form of your name, a desperate attempt to bridge the chasm that has opened between you. "Please, just let me go. No one has to know." The plea, the intimacy of your name on his lips, does not soften you. It ignites the final vestiges of your patience. The heat that had been simmering in your neck now floods your entire body. "No one has to know." You repeat, your voice dangerously low, a stark contrast to his panicked rasp. "The schoolmaster won't know his window is broken? My cousin won't know his garden has been trampled. Do you think we are all fools, Sang? His eyes dart from side to side, searching for an escape that isn't there. He is a boatman, a man used to the wide open expanse of the Nakdong River. This enclosed space, this feeling of being pinned, is unraveling him. But his stubbornness, the same quality that allows him to pole his boat against the strongest currents, now surfaces. His desperation hardens into defiance. He pushes himself up, his back scraping against the cold, damp stone of the well. What would you know of it? He snarls, his fear twisting into a bitter sneer. You, the dancer. You prance for coins at festivals while my daughter can't even afford a new brush. She wants to learn. She wants to read the books in that schoolhouse. The same books the magistrate's son uses for a footstool. What was I supposed to do, let her hope dry up like a puddle in the sun? Quote, his words are meant to wound, to find a crack in your resolve. You remember his daughter, a small, bright-eyed girl named Minjun, who once gave you a wildflower after you finished a dance. The memory is a sharp pang, but it doesn't sway you. So you steal? You retort, taking a step closer. The air between you crackles. You break the very place that holds the knowledge you want for her? You trample the work of good people to get what you want? That's the lesson you want to teach your daughter? That honor is for sale? Quote, honor doesn't feed a family. He spits back, his voice rising to a raw shout. He clenches his fists, his boatman's knuckles white in the moonlight. You stand there, so righteous, so clean. You haven't felt the shame of telling your child no for the 100th time. What are you going to do? Tell the whole village? Let them mock me? Let them whisper about Minjun's father, the thief? He takes a half step forward, his chin jutting out. Go on! Do it! Quote, it's a challenge, a desperate gamble. He thinks your honesty is just a form of pride, a weapon you'll use to ruin him. He is wrong. He's also forgetting one crucial fact. You are not just honest, you are hot-tempered. And he has pushed you too far. Just as the thought forms, he makes his move. It's not an attack, but a lunge, a final, desperate bid for freedom. He shoves off the well and tries to bolt past you, aiming for the narrow gap between you and a stack of firewood. He is strong, but he is also exhausted and clumsy. You, however, are in your element. Time seems to slow down. You don't meet his charge with force. That would be a fool's game against a man of his size. Instead, you pivot on the ball of your left foot, the same way you would to transition into a spin. You let his momentum carry him past you. As his arm brushes against yours, you don't grab it. You simply guide it, your hand pressing lightly on his elbow. At the same time, you swing your right leg back in a low, graceful arc. It's a movement you've practiced 1,000 times. A sweep designed to be both beautiful and unbalancing. Your foot connects with his ankle. It's not a kick, but a hook. His desperate forward momentum becomes his undoing. With his center of gravity already compromised and his ankle suddenly caught, he has no way to recover. A strangled cry of surprise escapes his lips as he tumbles forward. He doesn't slam into the ground. You are still moving, controlling his fall. You use his own weight to turn him, forcing him onto his stomach on the packed earth. Before he can even process what has happened, you are kneeling on his back, one knee pressed firmly between his shoulder blades. You grab his right wrist and pull it sharply behind his back. The fight goes out of him in an instant, replaced by a ragged sob of defeat. He lies still, his face pressed into the dirt, the smell of damp earth and his own sweat filling his nostrils. The entire exchange took less than 3 heartbeats. You hold him there, your own breath now coming a little faster, the adrenaline singing in your veins. The silence that follows is profound, broken only by Choi Sun's quiet, shuddering breaths. You have won. You have caught the thief. But there is no triumph in it, only a hollow, bitter ache. Seonna? What in the name of the ancestors is going on? Quote, the voice, calm and familiar, cuts through the tense quiet. You look up. Standing at the edge of the courtyard, bathed in the soft, warm glow of a paper lantern, is your cousin, Park Yong. His face, usually a mask of serene optimism, is etched with confusion and concern. He must have been woken by Choi Sang's final, desperate shout. He walks forward, his gardener's robe swishing quietly. The lantern light dances across the scene. You, kneeling over the prone figure of the village boatman, your expression a mixture of anger and exhaustion. Choi Sang turns his head away, hiding his face in the shadows. a deep and burning shame radiating from him. "Young," you say, your voice tight. "I caught him. He was trying to break into the schoolhouse." Quote. Park Young's eyes widen, but not with anger. He looks from you to the defeated man on the ground, and a deep sadness fills his expression. He sets the lantern down on the stone lip of the well, its light casting long, flickering shadows. "Choi sang SSI," he says, his voice gentle. "Is this true?" Quote. A muffled sound, something between a grunt and a sob, is Choi Sang's only reply. Park Young looks at you. He sees the tension in your shoulders, the way you're still holding Choi Sang's arm in a vice-like grip. He understands you better than anyone. He knows the fire in your temper, but he also knows the unyielding core of your integrity. "Let him up, Seona," he says softly. "He's not going anywhere." You hesitate. The anger is still a hot coal in your gut. But looking at your cousin's compassionate face, at the warm, steady light of his lantern, you feel some of the tension drain out of you. Slowly, you release Choi Sang's wrist and remove your knee from his back. You stand up, taking a step back, never taking your eyes off him. Choi Sang doesn't move for a long moment. Then, with the slow, pained movements of a man twice his age, he pushes himself onto his hands and knees and finally sits back on his heels. He doesn't look at either of you. He just stares at the dirt, his broad shoulders slumped in utter defeat. "I'll watch him," Park Young says, his voice a quiet promise. He moves to sit on the edge of the well, placing himself between Choi Sang and any path of escape, though it's clear the boatman has no fight left. Go and see the damage. We need to know what must be mended." You nod, grateful for the task, for something to do with the restless energy still coursing through you. You turn your back on the two men and walk away from the soft lamplight, back toward the shadows where the crime began. You approach the schoolhouse first. The broken lattice on the window hangs askew like a crooked tooth. Splinters of wood litter the ground beneath it. It's a small wound on the face of the building, easily repaired, yet it feels like a deep violation. This is where the children learn, where they trace their first clumsy characters, where their futures begin. Then, you turn your attention to the garden, your cousin's garden. As you step back into it, your heart sinks. In the chase, you had been focused only on your quarry. Now, in the quiet aftermath, you see the path of destruction. A swath of Park Young's prized autumn chrysanthemums, the ones he spends hours tending, are crushed and broken, their yellow and white heads lying limp in the dirt. The sharp, green scent of their broken stems hangs in the air like an accusation. A stake for a peony has been snapped in two. The carefully raked soil is scarred with the deep, desperate footprints of Choi Sang's flight. You kneel down, your bare feet sinking into the soft, wounded earth. You gently touch a ruined chrysanthemum blossom, its petals soft and bruised. Your cousin pours so much of himself into this garden. He believes that its beauty and order bring peace to the students, that a well-tended plot of land reflects a well-tended mind. To him, this destruction would be more hurtful than 1,000 stolen coins. All your simmering anger at Choi Sang solidifies into a profound and heavy sadness. You look at the damage, at this small pocket of chaos in a world of order, and you understand this is the real consequence. It isn't just about a broken window or a caught thief. It's about the trust that has been shattered and the beauty that has been thoughtlessly trampled in a single, desperate night. You rise slowly, your knees stiff, the soft dirt clinging to your bare feet. The image of the crushed flowers is burned into your mind. You turn and walk back towards the well, where the warm lantern light pushes back the gloom. Park Young stands up as you approach, his expression questioning, compassionate. Choi Sang remains on the ground, a crumpled heap of shame and exhaustion. He hasn't moved an inch. "The garden is a mess," you say, your voice flat, devoid of the earlier heat. "And the window lattice is broken." Park Young nods slowly, his gaze drifting to Choi Sang. "Wounds can be mended, Siana, both in wood and in soil. The deepest wounds are the ones we can't see." He looks at the boatman, his voice soft but firm. "Choi Sang SSI, you must get up. We must go to the elder." At the mention of the village elder, a tremor runs through Choi Sang's body. This is the final terrifying consequence. It is one thing to be caught by a hot-tempered dancer, another to face the quiet, unyielding judgment of the man who holds the village's respect in his weathered hands. With a great, shuddering sigh, he pushes himself to his feet. He stands hunched, his powerful frame looking shrunken and small. He won't meet your eyes, or Park Young's. He stares at the ground as if it holds the answer to a question he's afraid to ask. Park Young picks up the lantern. "Walk between us," he instructs gently. The journey to the elder's house is a slow, silent procession through the sleeping village. Park Young leads with the lantern. Its light, a small, brave star, in the overwhelming dark. You walk a pace behind Choi Sang, your presence a silent, watchful guard. The boatman shuffles, his steps heavy, the sound of his straw shoes dragging on the packed earth a miserable rhythm in the night's deep silence. You feel the cold night air on your skin, the sharp pebbles under your feet. Every shadow seems to hold a watching eye. Every whisper of wind sounds like a judgment. Your anger has cooled into a heavy stone in your stomach. You look at Choi Sang's slumped shoulders, and you don't see a villain anymore. You see the ruin of a man. The thought brings you no comfort. The elder's home is a modest house at the edge of the village, its thatch roof silvered by the moon. A single, gnarled plum tree stands guard by the door. Park Young approaches and knocks softly on the wooden door frame. "Elder Nim, forgive this intrusion. It is Park Young and Yuseon. There is a matter of some urgency." Quote, a few moments pass. Then a shuffling sound from within, and the soft glow of a candle appears behind the paper screen of the door. The door slides open to reveal Elder May, his sleeping robes hastily tied, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, and his eyes, though clouded with sleep, holding a deep, immediate clarity. He takes in the scene at a glance. Park Young's concerned face, your own grim expression, and the utterly defeated figure of Choi Sang standing between you. He does not look surprised, only weary. "Come in," he says, his voice a low rumble. "Let the night's troubles not disturb the neighbors." He leads you into the main room of his house. It is sparse and clean. Straw mats cover the floor, and a single low table sits in the center, upon which he places his candle. The flame flickers, casting your four shadows long and distorted against the paper walls. He gestures for you all to sit. You and Park Young sit formally, but Choi Sang sinks to the mat like a stone, his head bowed so low his chin almost touches his chest. The elder sits opposite him, his back straight despite his age. He lets the silence stretch, a tool he often uses to let the truth find its own way to the surface. Finally he looks at you. "You, Sion," he says. "Tell me what happened." You take a breath, forcing yourself to be calm, to be factual. You recount the events as they occurred. Your patrol, the sounds, seeing Choi Sang at the window. You describe his clumsy attempts, the noise he made, and the words you overheard, for his daughter. You detail the chase, the path of destruction through the garden, and the final confrontation at the well. You leave nothing out, not his desperation, nor your own anger. When you finish, the room is quiet again, the candlelight wavering as if in a sigh. The elder turns his gaze, heavy with years of wisdom, upon the boatman. "Choi Sang," he says, his voice even. "You have heard the accusation. Is it true?" Quote, Choi Sang gives a jerky, almost imperceptible nod, his eyes still fixed on the floor. "Why?" The elder's question is simple, but it hangs in the air with the weight of a judge's gavel. "The schoolhouse holds nothing of value but books and ink. Were you planning to sell the children's lessons for a few bowls of rice?" Quote, the question, tinged with a faint, disappointed scorn, seems to strike a nerve in Choi Sang. His stubbornness, which you had seen harden into defiance earlier, now crumbles into raw, unabashed grief. His broad shoulders begin to shake. A sound, a choked, guttural sob, is torn from his throat. "No," he whispers, his voice cracking. "Not the books. Never the books." He finally looks up, and in the flickering candlelight you see his face is a mask of misery, his eyes red-rimmed and swimming with unshed tears. I thought there was a money box, from the donations, for paper, for brushes." "You would steal from the children?" The elder presses, his voice still firm. "For my child!" The words burst from Choi Sang, a raw cry of anguish that fills the small room. He presses the heels of his hands into his eyes, as if to physically stop the flow of tears. But for Min Jun, at the mention of his daughter's name, the last of his pride shatters. The story comes pouring out of him, a torrent of grief and fear that has been dammed up for weeks behind a friendly, stubborn facade. "She is sick, Elder Nim," he gasps, the words stumbling over each other. "A fever that burns and will not break. The herbalist, his remedies do nothing. She grows weaker every day. She just lies there, her eyes too bright, her skin like fire. Quote, you feel a cold knot form in your stomach. You remember Minjun, her bright smile, the wildflower she gave you. You picture her small form consumed by fever, and the righteous anger you felt in the courtyard curdles into a sickening wave of pity. She needs a real physician, Choi Sang continues, his voice thick with tears. From the city, or the rare ginseng root the herbalist spoke of. It costs more than I make in 3 months of poling that cursed boat. The river has been low. The trade is poor. I have sold everything of value. There is nothing left. Quote, he lowers his hands and looks at the elder, his face naked with desperation. I didn't know what else to do. I would hear the other men in the village talk, laughing, buying new tools, treating their children to honey cakes, and I would go home to my daughter's silence, to the smell of sickness. I couldn't bear the pity. I couldn't bear to ask for help, to be a beggar in my own village. My pride, my stupid, useless pride. He trails off, his voice dissolving into a shuddering sob. I just wanted to make her well. The confession hangs in the air, raw and painful. The truth is out. It is not greed. It is not malice. It is the desperate, misguided love of a father pushed to the very edge of his hope. You look at Park Young. His optimistic face is filled with a profound sorrow, and he slowly reaches out, placing a comforting hand on Choi Sang's trembling shoulder. The simple gesture of kindness seems to break the man completely. He bows his head and weeps openly, the sound quiet and heartbreaking. The elder is silent for a long time, his gaze distant. Finally he speaks, and his voice is no longer that of a judge, but of a grandfather. You are a fool, Choi Sang, he says, his tone heavy not with anger, but with a deep, aching sadness. Choi Sang flinches, but the elder continues. You are a fool not because you are desperate. Poverty is a harsh winter that can freeze any man's heart. You are a fool because you thought you were alone in this village. You look at your neighbors and you see their laughter, their new tools, and you feel only shame. You do not see their hands, which would have reached out to help you had you only asked. Quote, he leans forward slightly, the candlelight illuminating the deep lines of empathy on his face. What is the most valuable thing in this village, boatman? Is it the rice in the storehouse? The books in the school? No, it is us. It is the trust between us. Tonight, in your fear, you tried to steal a few coins. You damaged a window, you trampled a garden. But the greatest crime you committed was against that trust. You chose to be a thief among your brothers rather than ask for their help. He sighs, a sound that seems to carry the weight of the entire village. Your pride did not feed your family. It almost cost you your honor and your place among us. Quote, the elder falls silent, letting the lesson settle. You look at Choi Sang, no longer a criminal, but a man drowning in a sea of his own making. You understand now, the crime wasn't the broken lattice or the ruined flowers. Those were just the symptoms. The disease was his pride, his isolation. And you, in your hot-tempered righteousness, had seen only the symptoms. Your daughter will not suffer because of your foolishness, the elder declares, his voice regaining its authority. Tomorrow I will speak with the herbalist myself. We will send for the physician from the city. The village will provide. A child's health is the responsibility of all of us. He then looks directly at Choi Sang, his eyes sharp. But you will repay your debt. You will repair the schoolhouse window with your own hands. And you will work in Park Young's garden. You will not just replace the soil and the plants you destroyed. You will tend it every day until it is more beautiful than it was before. You will learn with your own hands what it means to nurture something, to help it grow, instead of trampling it in the dark. Quote, Choi Sang looks up, his face streaked with tears and dirt, but for the first time since you caught him, a flicker of something other than fear or shame enters his eyes. It is a fragile, hesitant spark of hope. Thank you, Elder Nim, he whispers. Thank you. Quote, you sit on the straw mat, the hardness of the floor, a grounding reality. The night that began with such simple, stark clarity. A thief, a crime, a chase, has ended in a tangled web of human failing and desperate love. You came here to deliver a criminal for judgment, but you are the one who has received a lesson. You learned that honesty without compassion is a cold and brittle thing, and that behind a person's worst actions can lie their deepest pain. As you look at the defeated boatman and your compassionate cousin, under the wise gaze of the elder, you realize the true measure of a person isn't how they act when things are easy, but how a community responds when one of its own has fallen. And in that quiet, candlelit room, you feel the first rays of a new kind of understanding dawning in your heart. The elder's words settle in the small, candlelit room, not like dust, but like seeds falling on fertile ground. You feel them take root inside you, a strange and unfamiliar planting in the fiery soil of your heart. You look at Choi Sang, a man you were ready to see shackled in shame just an hour ago. Now, all you see is the raw terror of a father, a terror that drove him to shatter the peace of the village. The line between right and wrong, once so sharp and clear in your mind, has blurred into a soft, hazy gray. Elder May leans forward, his weathered hands resting on his knees. The village fund is small, he states, his tone now practical, but it exists for times like this. It is a safety net, woven from the good fortune of many harvests, meant to catch those who fall. You, Choi Sang, are not the first to stumble. He looks to Park Young. At first light, you will take the elder's horse. Ride to the magistrate's town. Do not waste a moment. Find Physician Kim. Tell him the village elder requests his presence and will cover his fee. Tell him a child's life is in the balance. Park Young bows his head, his face a study in solemn duty. I will not fail, Elder Nim. The elder then turns his gaze back to the weeping boatman. And you, Choi Sang, your family will not go hungry while you work to repay your debt. The wives of the village will see to it. A portion of rice from my own storehouse will be sent to your home this morning. Your daughter will have warm broth. Sickness requires strength to fight, and strength requires sustenance. Quote, this act of grace is too much for Choi Sang. A fresh wave of sobs racks his body. It is the sound of a dam breaking, not just of grief, but of the immense, crushing weight of his solitary struggle finally being lifted by other hands. He presses his forehead to the straw mat, his body language a testament to a humility so profound it is almost painful to witness. He doesn't offer words, he has none left. He can only offer his brokenness, and in this room it is accepted without judgment. You watch this unfold, your own heart aching with a confusing mix of shame and enlightenment. Your anger from the courtyard feels like a child's tantrum now, loud and meaningless. You were so focused on the transgression, on the letter of the law, that you were blind to the spirit behind it. You saw a broken window, but not a broken heart. You saw a thief, but not a desperate father. Your honesty, the quality you prided yourself on, feels incomplete, like a sword without a scabbard, sharp and dangerous, but lacking wisdom in how it is wielded. You, Sion, the elder says, and you startle as his gaze falls upon you. Your feet are swift, and your heart is true. You did your duty tonight, but remember this. Justice is the strong branch of a tree, but compassion is the water that allows it to grow. One without the other is either brittle or formless. A village needs both to thrive. Quote, you bow your head, unable to meet his wise eyes. I understand, Elder Nim, you whisper, and for the first time in your life you truly mean it. The lesson sinks deep, cooling the perpetual fire in your gut, leaving behind a warm, resonant glow. The elder nods, a silent dismissal. The audience is over. Park Young helps Choi Sang to his feet. The boatman is unsteady, his body drained of all strength, both physical and emotional. You stand, feeling the stiffness in your own limbs from the long night. The three of you bow to the elder one last time and slip back out into the pre-dawn chill. The walk back is a silent one, but it is a different silence. It is not the tense, watchful quiet of your journey to the elder's house. This is a heavy, contemplative silence, thick with unspoken emotions. The lantern in Park Young's hand cuts a small, hopeful path through the darkness, which is already beginning to soften at the edges into the deep indigo of approaching dawn. You no longer walk behind Choi Sang like a guard. You find yourself falling into step beside him. He flinches when he realizes you are near, but you say nothing, simply matching his slow, shuffling pace. It is a small gesture, but it feels monumental. It is an admission that you are now walking the same path, not as pursuer and pursued, but as two members of the same village, returning from the brink. When you reach the school courtyard, the first pale light of day is kissing the rooftops. The scene of the crime looks different now. The shadows that had seemed so menacing are now just gentle pools of gray. The ginkgo tree where you hid stands serene and ancient. The destruction, however, is laid bare by the honest morning light. The broken lattice is a gaping wound. The trampled garden is a mess of bruised leaves and snapped stems. Choi Sang sees it, and a fresh wave of shame washes over his face. He visibly winces, his gaze fixed on the ruined chrysanthemum bed. He destroyed this. In his blind panic, he had scarred this place of peace. Park Yong sets the lantern down, its flame now pale against the growing light. "I must prepare the horse," he says softly, his eyes full of sympathy for the boatman. He places a hand on Choi Sang's shoulder. "The mending begins now," Choi Sang SSI. "For the garden, and for everything else. Start by clearing the broken wood from the window. We will find new lattice today." With that, your cousin turns and heads toward the stables, his steps purposeful. You and Choi Sang are left alone in the quiet courtyard. It is an awkward, charged moment. He still refuses to look at you, his eyes glued to the evidence of his folly. You should leave. Your duty is done. You should go home, sleep, and try to forget the turmoil of the night, but you can't. The elder's words echo in your mind. Justice is the branch, compassion is the water. Thence, you walk over to the well, the same one where you had cornered him. You work the rope, the wood groaning softly in the morning quiet, and draw up a bucket of cold, clear water. You carry it over to where Choi Sang is standing, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides. You set the heavy wooden bucket down between you. He looks at it, then up at you, his eyes full of confusion. "You will be thirsty," you say. Your voice is rough from lack of sleep, but the hot edge is gone. It is just a voice, quiet, tired. He stares at you, his mouth slightly agape. He seems to be waiting for the taunt, the accusation that is sure to follow. It doesn't come. You simply nod toward the bucket and then turn away, walking toward the ruined garden. You kneel down, just as you had hours before, your bare feet pressing into the damp, scarred earth. You gently begin to pick up the broken stems and the bruised, scattered petals. You work in silence, your movements slow and deliberate. It is not your task. The elder assigned this work to Choi Sang. But you feel compelled to begin. It is a penance, not for his crime, but for your own blindness. After a long moment, you hear movement behind you. Choi Sang slowly kneels on the other side of the flower bed. He does not look at you, but he mirrors your actions. His large, calloused hands, so used to thick ropes and heavy oars, move with a surprising gentleness as he gathers the debris. His hands are clumsy, and he fumbles with the delicate broken blossoms. But his touch is reverent. You work together in the rising dawn, the silence broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant sound of the village stirring to life. The air smells of damp earth and crushed flowers. It is the scent of destruction, but also of new beginnings. He is starting to repay his debt, and you are starting to learn your lesson. He finally breaks the silence, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. "Min Jun, she loves these flowers." You pause, a handful of broken stems in your hand. You look across the ruined bed at him. His face is turned down, but you can see the deep sorrow etched into his features. "I know," you reply softly. "I remember she gave me a wildflower once, after a festival dance." Quote, a single tear escapes his eye and traces a clean path through the dirt on his cheek. "She has a good heart," he murmurs. "She did not deserve this. My shame." "The physician will come," you say, your voice firm with a conviction that surprises you both. Park Yong is fast, and the elder's horse is the swiftest in the village. "Your daughter will have the best care." Quote, he looks up at you then, truly looks at you for the first time. His eyes are filled with a desperate, fragile gratitude. He sees no anger in your face, no judgment. He sees only the truth of your words. He nods, a deep, shuddering affirmation. "Thank you, Yu Xian," he says. And this time, your name on his lips does not sound like a plea, but like a recognition. He is not thanking you for catching him, or for your pity. He is thanking you for this, for kneeling in the dirt with him, for sharing the burden of the morning's repair. As the sun finally crests the mountains, casting long golden rays into the courtyard, the scene is transformed. It is no longer a place of crime and pursuit. It is a place of quiet work, a shamed man and a humble dancer, kneeling together, trying to mend what was broken in the dark. You realize the twist of fate wasn't just that Choi Sang was a thief. It was that his terrible act had forced a crack in your own stubborn pride, allowing the light of compassion to finally shine in. And you know with a certainty that settles deep in your bones that you will never be the same again. The sun's warmth spreads across your back, a stark contrast to the lingering chill of the night. You work methodically, your fingers separating the healthy chrysanthemum stems from the broken ones. Beside you, Choi-sang continues his own silent, painstaking work. The air is filled with the sounds of the waking village, a rooster crowing its belated greeting to the sun, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the cheerful chatter of women on their way to the well. Each normal, everyday sound feels alien, as if you have returned from a long journey to a foreign land. After a time, Choi-sang rises stiffly, his hands full of wilted blossoms and snapped stalks. He carries them to a refuse pile near the wall, his movements slow and deliberate. He glances at the schoolhouse, at the damaged window, and then back at you. There is a deep, weary resignation in his eyes. "The elder said I must repair the window," he says, his voice low and hoarse. I should begin." Quote, "You nod, not looking up from your work. Go on." He hesitates for a second, as if wanting to say more, then turns and shuffles toward the schoolhouse. You hear him begin to carefully pry away the remaining splinters of the broken lattice, the sound small and precise in the morning air. You are alone now, kneeling in the dirt, surrounded by the quiet devastation. And with the silence, the thoughts you've been holding at bay come rushing in. You replay the chase in your mind, not as a memory, but as if you are watching another person, a stranger possessed by a familiar fire. You see this stranger, this version of you, flow across the courtyard. You feel the thrill of it again, a phantom echo in your muscles, the smooth glide over the bench, the clean, soaring leap over the hedge. Your body had sung with purpose, every sense alive, every muscle responding with perfect, trained obedience. It was a dance, a dark and frantic one, and for a few heart-pounding moments you had been the master of its stage. A knot of shame tightens in your stomach. You had been hunting a man, a desperate, terrified man, and a part of you had reveled in the raw, physical poetry of it. You had reduced his terror to a rhythm, his flight to a series of steps you could counter and overcome. Your temper. You had always thought of it as a shield, a fire that kept the world from getting too close, that ensured no one took you for a fool. It was the source of your honesty, you told yourself. But now, seeing it laid bare in the quiet light of day, you see it for what it truly is. A blindfold. It had blinded you to the truth you heard with your own ears. Denio the Perfulo Nuts. Mords had reached you, faint on the wind, but they had been there. A man with a gentler heart, a calmer spirit, a man like Park Yong would have paused. He would have let the words settle, would have wondered at their meaning. But you? You heard them and dismissed them, letting the hot wave of indignation wash them away. The insult of the crime felt more important than the reason behind it. You pressed the heels of your hands into your eyes, the grit of the garden soil rough against your skin. The confrontation at the well plays out behind your eyelids. You hear your own voice, sharp and righteous, cutting through Choi-sang's desperate pleas. Asterisk. Do you think we are all fools? That's the lesson you want to teach your daughter? Asterisk. Each word is a fresh stab of regret. You had stood on your moral high ground, a king on a mountain of assumptions, and passed judgment on a man who was already drowning. You had used his daughter's name as a weapon against him, twisting his love into a source of shame. How could you have been so cruel? The elegant sweep of your leg, the practiced move that brought him to the ground, no longer feels like a display of skill. It feels like bullying. It was the final, arrogant flourish in a performance of self-righteous fury. You drop your hands and stare at the wounded earth. This garden, which Park Yong nurtures with such boundless optimism, is a reflection of the village, and last night, 2 men had trampled it. Choi-sung, in his blind desperation, and you, in your blind anger. He had left scars with his feet, and you had almost left deeper ones with your pride. If Park Yong hadn't arrived, what would you have done? Hauled Choi-sung to the elder yourself, filled with the venomous pride of the hero who caught the thief? You shudder at the thought. You would have presented his crime, but you would have completely missed the story. You would have been just, but you would have been wrong. The elder's words come back to you. Justice is the branch, compassion is the water. Asterisk. Last night you were a branch in a drought, hard and ready to snap. You spend the rest of the morning working, your mind a quiet, churning sea of reflection. The physical labor is a solace. Clearing the debris, turning the soil, preparing the bed for new life. It feels like an act of atonement. You are not just mending the garden. You are trying to mend the jagged tear in your own understanding of the world. By the time the sun is high in the sky, the worst of the damage has been cleared. The scarred patch of earth looks clean, if empty. Choi Sung has finished removing the broken lattice and is now painstakingly measuring a new piece of wood he has brought from his home. He works with a silent, dogged focus, the picture of a man trying to rebuild his world one careful cut at a time. Late in the afternoon, you hear the familiar clop of horses' hooves. You look up from your work to see Park Young riding into the courtyard. He looks weary, his clothes dusted from the road, but his face is calm. He dismounts, giving the horse's flank a grateful pat before leading it toward the stables. A few minutes later, he returns, carrying a water skin. He walks over and sits on the edge of the well, watching you for a moment as you straighten up, wiping sweat from your brow. "The physician will be here by nightfall," he says, his voice steady. He was reluctant to leave the town, but the promise of the elder's coin and the urgency in my voice convinced him. He will stay until Minjun's fever breaks. You feel a wave of relief so profound it almost makes you dizzy. "That is good news, Yong." "It is," he agrees, taking a long drink from the water skin before offering it to you. You take it, the cool water a balm to your dry throat. You sit beside him on the stone lip of the well, the two of you watching Choi Sang work. For a long time, neither of you speaks. You are simply two cousins, sharing a quiet moment at the end of a long, transformative day. It is Park Yong who finally breaks the silence. "I have been thinking," he says, his gaze distant. "All the way to the magistrate's town, and all the way back, I kept thinking, how did we not see it?" Choi Sang has been quieter these past weeks. His jokes were not as loud. He spent more time on the river, less time at the market. We all saw it, but we did not see it. We saw a man growing distant, not a man in pain. Quote. His words echo your own thoughts. "His pride was a high wall," you murmur. "Pride is a wall we all build, Seon-ah," Park Yong replies gently, "to protect ourselves. But sometimes we build it so high we cannot see over it, and our neighbors cannot see in." His wall was built of shame. And ours, perhaps ours, was built of comfort, of assuming everything was fine because it was fine for us. He sighs, a sound of deep, empathetic sorrow. The elder was right. A village is not a collection of houses. It is a promise to look out for one another. And I failed to look closely enough. Quote, hearing the guilt in your cousin's voice, your own shame feels suddenly sharper, more acute. "You did not fail, Yong," you say, your voice rough. "I did." You would have shown him kindness. You would have asked what was wrong. I saw a crime, and it was all I could see. The anger. It was so hot, so fast, it burned away everything else. You finally confess what has been tormenting you all day. "I enjoyed the chase, Yong," you whisper, the admission tasting sour. My heart was pounding. The world felt sharp and clear. I felt powerful. And now I feel sick thinking of it. He was running for his daughter's life, and I was running for the thrill of the pursuit. Quote, Park Young turns to look at you. There is no judgment in his eyes, only a deep, unwavering understanding that has always been the foundation of your bond. "You are a dancer, Yu Seon," he says softly. "Your body is your language. When you are angry, you move. When you are joyful, you move. Last night you were filled with a righteous fire, and so you moved with fire. That is your nature. It is not something to be ashamed of." He places a hand on your shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. The fire itself is not the problem. It is what forges your honesty. It is what makes you act when others would stand by. The lesson of last night was not to quench your fire, cousin. It was to learn how to bank it, to use its light to see more clearly, not just its heat, to burn what is in front of you. Quote, his words are a balm. He is not excusing your actions, but he is helping you understand them, to fit them into the person you are and the person you want to become. Your friendship has always been this way. Your fire and his calm, his optimism and your realism. meeting in the middle to form a stronger whole. This shared night, this terrible and beautiful lesson, has not broken that. It has tempered it, like steel, making it stronger, more resilient. I stood there, you say, looking at your hands, still stained with the garden's soil, and I called him a fool and a thief, and all he was a father. And today, Park Yong says, his gaze shifting to Choi Sang, who is now carefully fitting the new wooden lattice into the window frame, he is a carpenter and a gardener. And tomorrow, with luck, he will be a relieved father. People are not just one thing, Seona. We are all many things at once. A thief and a father, a dancer and a hunter, a gardener and a friend. Quote, you look at Choi Sang, at the careful, patient way he works. The anger you felt toward him is a distant echo. In its place is a complex tapestry of pity, respect, and a shared, fragile humanity. You are bound to him now, not as captor and captive, but by the events of this night and the lessons learned in the elder's quiet room. You rise from the well and walk back to the garden. Park Yong follows. You pick up a small gardening rake, and he picks up a trowel. Without another word, you begin to work together, smoothing the soil, preparing the earth for the new chrysanthemum shoots Park Yong will plant tomorrow. You work side by side, your movements falling into a comfortable rhythm. The sun begins to dip toward the horizon, painting the courtyard in hues of orange and gold. The air is cool and smells of promise. You have a long way to go. The garden is not yet whole, and the heart of the village still bears a faint scar. But here, in the fading light, two cousins worked together, mending the earth. Their friendship deepened. Their understanding of the world irrevocably and beautifully changed. The next few days unfolded in a strange, suspended reality. A quiet hum of purpose replaced the sharp discord of the night you caught Choi Sang. Physician Kim, a stern but capable man with wispy white sideburns, had arrived as promised and installed himself in the boatman's small home. A curl of medicinal smoke, smelling of bitter roots and dried berries, now perpetually hung over their thatch roof, a fragrant banner of the battle being waged within. And every day, from sunrise to sunset, Choi Sang was a fixture in the school courtyard. He worked with a singular, quiet intensity that was both a penance and a prayer. He meticulously replaced the window lattice, his large hands surprisingly deft. And when that was done, he turned his full attention to the garden, his broad back bent over the wounded earth for hours on end. He was a constant, visible reminder of what had happened, a living testament to both crime and consequence. You and Park Yong found a new rhythm yourselves. You would finish your morning duties and find yourselves drawn back to the courtyard, not to watch Choi Sang, but to work alongside him. You would weed the undisturbed flower beds while Park Yong prepared new chrysanthemum shoots for planting. Choi Sang never spoke to you directly unless necessary, and you offered him the same quiet space. Yet a silent understanding flowed between the three of you, a shared sense of mending. But the village was not silent. Whispers followed you like your own shadow. You'd hear them at the well as you drew water, or in the market as you bartered for rice. The elder is too soft, grumbled a stout farmer whose own storage shed had been pilfered a year ago by a vagrant. A thief is a thief. To let him work it off in a garden, what kind of justice is that? It invites trouble. Others were more sympathetic. His child was sick, a mother would murmur to her friend. What would you do? A father's heart knows no laws. The village, once a cohesive whole, now seemed fractured by the incident, its members choosing sides in a quiet, simmering debate. One afternoon, as you were helping Park Yong stake a row of new saplings, the weight of the whispers pressed down on you. They think he got away with it, you said, your voice low as you tightened a piece of twine. You glanced over at Choi Sang, who was on his hands and knees, painstakingly removing every small stone from the soil he was preparing. They see him here, working in the sun, and they think it's a holiday, not a punishment. Quote, Park Yong paused, wiping a bead of sweat from his temple with the back of his hand. Is that what you think, Sana? You hesitated. The fire in your gut, though banked, was not entirely extinguished. A part of you, the part that had felt the thrill of the chase, still remembered the violation, the insult. I don't know, you admitted, the honesty costing you a pang of shame. I see him, and I see his remorse. I know the story now. But he still broke the law. He still terrified me. he still trampled your garden. Is clearing a few stones and fixing a window enough? Where is the justice in it? Quote, Park Young looked at you, his gaze steady and thoughtful. The elder asked me a question once when I was a boy, angry that a playmate had broken my favorite kite. He asked, "What is the purpose of justice, Young?" I said it was to punish the one who did wrong. But the elder shook his head. He told me that punishment is only one tool of justice, and a clumsy one at that. He said the truest purpose of justice is to make things right again. He gestured with his trowel, encompassing the entire courtyard. If we had exiled Choi Sang, what would have been made right? His daughter would be without a father, his wife without a husband. The village would have lost a skilled boatman and gained a grieving family to support. The window would still be broken, and my garden would still be trampled. We would have punished him, yes, but we would have wounded ourselves in the process. We would have created more brokenness. Quote, he knelt beside you, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. Look at what is happening instead. The window is repaired. The garden is on its way to being healed. Physician Kim is caring for Min Jun, paid for by the village, an act that reminds everyone we are a community. And Choi Sang is paying his debt, not with the currency of shame, but with the currency of sweat and effort. He is making restitution. Every stone he removes, every clod of earth he turns, is an act of atonement. He is not just fixing a garden, Siana. He is rebuilding his honor, right here, in front of all of us. This isn't leniency. It's a harder path. Public shame is a flash fire. It burns hot and fast. This is a slow, steady, quiet fire that he must tend every single day. It is a justice that seeks to heal, not just to wound. Quote, his words settled over you, clear and luminous as the afternoon light. You finally understood. Compassion wasn't about ignoring the crime. It wasn't weakness. It was the wisdom that guided the hand of justice. It was the force that chose to mend instead of break, to restore instead of cast out. You had been so focused on the single act of theft that you failed to see the wider tapestry of the community, and how a single pulled thread could unravel the whole cloth if not carefully rewoven. The elder's justice wasn't for Choi Sang alone. It was for the entire village. The true test of this understanding came 2 days later. The talk that had been whispering in the corners of the village finally spilled out into the open. It happened in the market square, the heart of the village, where news and goods were traded with equal fervor. A group had gathered around Merchant Go, a notoriously shrewd silk trader known for his sharp tongue and even sharper accounting. It sets a dangerous precedent, he declared, his voice carrying across the square. He slammed a bolt of blue silk down on his stall for emphasis. So now, if my accounts are short, I just have to claim my son needs a new pair of shoes? If the rice merchant's stores are low, he can blame it on a sick aunt? Where does it end? The law must be a firm wall, not a flimsy screen that anyone with a sad story can walk through. Quote, a few men nodded in agreement. Weaver Park, a nervous man who saw calamity in every cloud, wrung his hands. Merchant Go is right. The stability of the village depends on everyone respecting the rules. If the rules can be bent for one, they can be bent for all. It creates uncertainty. Quote, but Mother Kim, whose own children played with Min Jun, stepped forward, her face flushed with indignation. And what stability is there in letting a child waste away? What kind of village are we if we stand by and watch a man, a good man who has made a terrible mistake out of love, lose his daughter? Is our stability built on a foundation of cold hearts? Quote, the crowd murmured, torn between the rigid principle of law and the undeniable pull of empathy. It was the village's conflict in miniature. You and Park Young stood at the edge of the crowd, having come to buy seats. You felt the old heat rise in your neck, the urge to leap in, to shout them all down. But Park Young's words echoed in your mind. First, use the light, not just the heat. You took a slow breath, banking the fire. Then, you stepped forward into the circle. All eyes turned to you. You, Sion, the street dancer. The hot-tempered one. The one who had caught the thief. Your presence commanded a sudden silence. Merchant Go, you began, your voice quiet but clear, carrying in the sudden stillness. You speak of a firm wall, but a wall with no gate is a prison. What you saw as leniency, I saw as the wisest form of justice. Quote, the merchant snorted. You caught him! I would have thought you, of all people, would want to see him punished. Quote, I did, you said, your honesty stunning the crowd. When I caught him, I was filled with anger. I wanted him shamed. I wanted him gone. You looked around the circle, meeting the eyes of your neighbors. But I was wrong. I saw a crime, but I was blind to the cause. We all were. We saw a friend grow quiet and assumed he was merely tired. We saw a father grow distant and assumed he was just busy. None of us saw that he was drowning. Quote, you turned your gaze back to Merchant Go. The elder's judgment didn't erase the crime. Do not mistake that. Choi Sang is repaying his debt. He is repaying it to the schoolmaster with a new window. He is repaying it to my cousin with his labor in the garden. And he is repaying it to all of us by forcing us to look at what we value more, rigid rules, or the well-being of our neighbors. Quote, you took another step forward, your voice gaining strength not from anger but from a newfound conviction. What would you have preferred? That we send him away? Then we, the village, would be paying to support his wife and child. We would be short a boatman when the trade routes are busy. We would have taught ourselves that when a brother falls, we kick him to make sure he stays down. The elder chose another way. He taught us that when a brother falls, we find a way to help him stand up again, even as he atones for his stumble. That doesn't weaken the village, Merchant Go. It makes us stronger. It reaffirms the promise that we are not just people who live near each other. We are a community. And a community takes care of its own. A profound silence followed your words. You had laid your own transformation bare for them to see. You, the embodiment of fiery, uncompromising honesty, were arguing for a justice rooted in compassion. No one could dispute your right to speak. No one could question your motives. You had earned that right in the moonlit courtyard. It was Mother Kim who broke the silence. She began to clap, a slow, deliberate sound. Then another person joined her, and another. Soon, the entire square, save for a scowling Merchant Go and a still-fretting Weaver Park, was filled with the sound of applause. It wasn't for you, not really. It was an affirmation of the principle you had laid out. It was the village choosing, together, what kind of place it wanted to be. Later that evening, as the sun bled purple and orange across the sky, you saw a small, hopeful scene. Choi Sang was washing his hands and face at the well, his day's labor done. His wife approached from their home, carrying a small wooden bowl. She handed it to him, and he sat on the edge of the well to eat. She stood beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. There were no words, but their shared silence was not one of shame or distance. It was weary, yes, but it was together. He was still a man in debt, a man with a long road of atonement ahead. But he was no longer an outcast. He was a husband, being cared for, a father whose daughter was getting well, a neighbor who was being allowed to mend the trust he had broken. You felt Park Young come to stand beside you, and together you watched as the village, wounded but not broken, slowly, carefully began to heal itself. The faint, rhythmic scrape of Choi Sang's bowl against his chopsticks faded as he and his wife disappeared into the humble silhouette of their home. A single light bloomed in their window, a small beacon of domestic peace in the vast, gathering dark. You and Park Young remained by the well, two silent figures caught in the day's final, gentle exhalation. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of wood smoke and the rich, damp smell of the healing earth in the garden. For a long while you simply stood, watching the stars begin to prick the deep velvet of the sky, feeling the chaotic energy of the market square finally drain from your limbs, leaving a strange, hollow quiet in its place. I don't know who that was today, you said, your voice barely a whisper, afraid to break the fragile peace of the evening. The man who spoke in the market. His voice sounded like mine, but the words, they felt like someone else's. Quote, Park Young turned his head, a faint smile touching his lips in the gloom. That was you, Seona. It was the you that has learned the fire is for more than just burning. He gestured toward the garden, a dark sleeping patch beside the schoolhouse. It's light, too. It can help you see the path. Today you didn't just walk it, you lit it for others. Quote, his words meant as a comfort, felt like a heavy cloak settling on your shoulders. You sank onto one of the cold wooden benches, the same kind you had vaulted over in your pursuit of Choi Sang. The memory felt like it belonged to another lifetime. But the fire is still there, Yong, you confessed, The truth of it, a familiar heat in your chest. When Merchant Go slammed that silk on his stall, I felt it. The urge to kick the legs out from under his table. The desire to see his face when all his precious fabrics were lying in the dust of the square. It was there. It was hot, and it was fast. You looked at your hands, resting on your knees. They were steady now, but you could still feel the phantom tremble of rage. The only thing that stopped me was seeing the elder's face in my mind, hearing his voice. It was like throwing a bucket of well water on a flame. It hissed and steamed, but it did not go out. Quote, "You leaned forward, resting your elbows on your knees, the weight of your thoughts pressing you down. That's what frightens me. Before all this, my responsibilities were simple. Dance well. Don't get cheated at the market. Try not to punch the magistrate's arrogant son. My world was small. My duties were to myself. You shook your head, the motion barely perceptible. But now, when I spoke today, they listened. Weaver Park, Mother Kim, even the ones who grumbled, they listened. I felt the weight of their attention. And I realized my actions are not just my own anymore. When I chased Choi Sang, I wasn't just a dancer catching a thief. I was the village's anger, its sense of violation, given legs and breath. And when I spoke in the market, I wasn't just stating my opinion. I was helping to decide what kind of village we are. Quote, "You fell silent. The enormity of that responsibility settling into your bones. It was a terrifying, humbling thing. To be a part of something larger than your own temper, your own pride. To know that your choices, your words, your actions, could either help mend the fabric of your community or tear it further." Park Yong sat down beside you on the bench, the slight dip of the wood a comforting, solid presence. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the same patch of night sky as yours. "We all have our role to play," he said finally, his voice thoughtful and low. "For years I believed mine was simple too. I tend the garden, I bring flowers to the temple, I create beauty and order, and I believe that this brings peace. That was the beginning and the end of my duty." He sighed, a sound filled with a sorrowful wisdom that went far beyond his years. "But I was wrong. I was just as blind as you were, Seon. Only my blindness came from complacency, not from fire." Quote, he shifted on the bench, turning to face you more directly. I saw Choi Sang's despair growing. "I am a gardener. I know the signs of a plant in distress. The way the leaves curl at the edges, the loss of color, the slight droop of the stem that tells you the roots are struggling. I saw all those signs in him. His jokes became brittle. His eyes lost their light. He stopped talking about his daughter's cleverness and started talking about the low water on the river. I saw the plant begin to yellow, but I never thought to check the roots. I just assumed the sun would fix it. I assumed my optimism, my belief in the inherent goodness of things, was enough." Quote, "The confession hung in the air between you, as raw and honest as your own. You saw your cousin not as the perfect, serene gardener, but as a man grappling with his own failings. My responsibility," he continued, his voice thick with emotion, "is not just to plant flowers. It is to tend to the garden of our community, and that means looking for the signs of blight. It means being willing to get my hands dirty, to dig into the soil of a person's trouble and see if there is a stone crushing the root. My kindness was passive. I smiled at Choi Sang. I asked after his health. But I never truly asked, 'Brother, are you well? Is your heart heavy?' I failed him just as much as his pride did. I left him to wither, and in the end, he was so desperate he tried to tear down the very thing we are all trying to build." Quote, "You looked at the schoolhouse, a dark shape against the star-dusted sky, a place of building. A place Choi Sang had almost broken. A place you had defended without understanding. So what is the answer, Yong?" you asked, the question raw. "How do we do it? How do we carry this weight?" Merchant Go is not entirely wrong. If there are no rules, there is chaos. But Mother Kim is right, too. If there is no compassion, there is cruelty. How can we be both a firm wall and an open gate? Quote, "I think," Park Yong said slowly, choosing his words with the care of a man planting a delicate seed, "we learn to be gardeners of our community. A good gardener knows what his plants need. Some need the full, hot sun to thrive. They need exposure and intensity. That is your fire, Seona. That is the justice that demands wrongs be brought into the light. Without it, the weeds of deceit and crime would grow in the shadows, choking everything. Your anger, your righteous chase, it was necessary. You exposed the sickness so it could be treated. Quote, he picked up a small, smooth stone from the ground beside the bench, turning it over and over in his palm. But other plants need shade. They need gentle watering. They need protection from the harshness of the day. That is compassion. That is the elder's wisdom. It is the understanding that a struggling plant doesn't need to be ripped out of the ground. It needs to be nurtured back to health. It is knowing that Choi Song's spirit, once exposed, needed care, not scorn. He looked from the stone in his hand to you, his eyes full of a deep and abiding affection. Our responsibility, yours and mine, is to learn to see the difference. It is to look at a person, at a situation, and ask, what does this need? Does it need the fierce sun of justice? Or does it need the gentle rain of mercy? Most of the time, I think, it needs a little of both. It needs someone with fire to bring the truth to light, and someone with a gentle hand to help heal the wounds that the truth reveals. Quote, his words didn't provide a simple answer, but they offered something better, a way forward, a framework for understanding your own nature and your place in the world. You were not a mistake. Your fire was not a flaw. It was a tool, one you were only just beginning to learn how to use with skill and wisdom. And you were not alone in this. You had Park Yong, the calm water to your fire, the steady hand to your swift feet. You leaned back against the bench, the cold wood a grounding force. You looked up at the vast, silent river of stars. For the first time, you didn't feel like a small, angry speck in a world too big to care. You felt like a single, necessary star in a constellation, bound to the others by an invisible, unbreakable light. The weight of responsibility was still there, heavy on your shoulders, but it no longer felt like a burden that would crush you. It felt like the satisfying weight of a well-made tool, a thing of purpose, something you could learn to wield for the good of all. From the direction of the boatman's house, you heard the faint, dry sound of a cough. Physician Kim, no doubt, awake and watchful. It was a reminder that the work of healing was slow, that it happened in the quiet hours, long after the drama had faded. The garden was not yet whole. The village was not yet seamless. But the mending had begun. And you, Sion, the hot-tempered street dancer, had found your part to play in it, not just as a guard on the wall, but as a keeper of the gate. Weeks bled into a month, and the sharp, painful memory of that moonlit night began to soften at the edges, like a stone worn smooth by a persistent river. The school courtyard, once a stage for crime and confrontation, had transformed into a quiet testament to resilience. Under Park Yong's guidance and Choi Sang's relentless labor, the garden was not merely restored. It was reborn. The patch of earth once scarred by desperate footprints now boasted neat rows of late-blooming chrysanthemums, their heads a defiant riot of gold, white, and deep purple against the cooling air. Choi Sang worked with the quiet dignity of a man who understood his task was not merely to move dirt, but to rebuild a world. He spoke little, but his silence was no longer the heavy cloak of shame. It was the focused quiet of a craftsman. The village, having chosen its path in the market square, settled into a watchful peace, the healing as slow and steady as the work in the garden. You found your own rhythms changing. The restless energy that had once driven you to seek out festival crowds and dance until your muscles burned was now channeled into the quiet earth of the courtyard. You would spend afternoons alongside your cousin, not out of duty, but out of a strange, newfound sense of peace. The fire in your belly was still there, but you were learning it could warm as well as burn. The first true test of this new equilibrium came not for you, but for Park Yong. It was a crisp afternoon, the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue. You were helping Choi Sang transplant a small pine sapling near the entrance to the garden when a commotion erupted from the direction of the market. It was the shrill, angry voice of Merchant Go. "Thief! Little brat! Give that back!" Quote. You and Park Yong exchanged a look. The old Sion would have been there in a flash, ready for a fight. The new Sion waited, watching her cousin. Park Yong's serene expression tightened, not with anger, but with a firm resolve you had never seen in him before. He placed his trowel down carefully, wiped his hands on his trousers, and strode toward the market square with a purpose that was both calm and utterly unyielding. You followed a few paces behind, curious and a little anxious. In the center of the square, Merchant Go had a firm grip on the ear of a small, grimy-faced boy of no more than 7. The boy was wailing, his face streaked with tears and dirt, clutching a single, slightly bruised pear. "I found it," the boy sobbed. "It was on the ground." Quote, "On the ground after you knocked it from my stall, you little liar." The merchant spat, his face red with indignation. A small crowd was gathering, their expressions a mixture of pity and reluctance to interfere with the notoriously ill-tempered merchant. The old Park Yong would have approached with a placating smile. He would have offered to pay for the pear himself, to smooth over the conflict and restore the peace. But this was not the old Park Yong. He walked directly up to the merchant and placed a hand gently but firmly on the man's arm. "Let the boy go, Merchant Go," he said. His voice was quiet, yet it cut through the boy's cries and the merchant's blustering. "This is none of your concern, gardener," Go sneered, though he did loosen his grip slightly. "This thief needs to be taught a lesson." Quote, "A lesson in what?" Park Yong asked, his gaze unwavering. "Fear? Humiliation? Or truth?" He crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with the terrified child. "Son," he said, his voice now soft and reassuring, "tell me what happened. The truth. No one will harm you." Sniffling, the boy rubbed his eyes with a dirty fist. "I was chasing a beetle," he whispered. "I bumped the stall. The pear fell. I picked it up to give it back, but he grabbed me." Park Yong looked at the pear in the boy's hand. It was bruised on one side, just as one would expect from a fall onto the hard-packed earth. He then looked up at the merchant's stall. The pears were stacked in a neat, precarious pyramid. It was easy to see how a slight bump could send one tumbling. Park Yong stood up, his demeanor still calm but now infused with an unshakable authority. "He is a child who made a clumsy mistake, Merchant Go," he said, his voice ringing with clarity. "He is not a thief. Your own display is unstable. The fault here is shared, if there is any fault at all beyond a boy chasing a beetle." He took the pear from the child's hand and pressed 2 small coins into the merchant's palm. "This is for the fruit. Now apologize to the boy for frightening him." The merchant stared, dumbfounded. "Apologize? To him?" Quote, "Yes," Park Yong stated simply. "Injustice does not become righteous simply because its victim is small. You have publicly accused him. Now you will publicly absolve him." The crowd murmured its approval. Faced with Park Yong's quiet certainty and the shifting mood of his neighbors, Merchant Go faltered. He grumbled. He scowled, but the fight had gone out of him. "Fine," he muttered, glaring at the boy. "It was a mistake. Now be off with you." It was not a heartfelt apology, but it was enough. Park Yong placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, steered him toward his worried mother, who was hovering at the edge of the crowd, and then turned to walk away, the matter concluded. You fell into step beside him as he headed back to the courtyard. You were speechless. He had not raised his voice. He had not issued a single threat. He had simply wielded the truth like a well-honed tool, dismantling the injustice piece by piece. He had seen a struggling plant and had not just watered it, but had actively shielded it from a harsh and undeserved wind. "Young," you said, once you were back within the relative quiet of the school grounds. "I have never seen you like that." He picked up his trowel and looked at the sapling, his brow furrowed in thought. "For too long I thought peace was the absence of conflict," he said, patting the earth around the young tree's base. "I am beginning to understand that true peace is the presence of justice. And justice, sometimes it requires you to stand in the wind, not just hope it will stop blowing." Quote, "A week later, it was your turn. The magistrate's son, a boy of 16 named Quan, was everything you despised. Arrogant, cruel, and swaddled in a sense of entitlement so thick it was practically visible. He and his coterie of sneering friends often used the school courtyard as a shortcut, strutting through it as if they owned it. One afternoon they came upon Choi Sang, who was on his knees, meticulously pulling the last of the stubborn weeds from a flower bed. "Well, well," Quan sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "If it isn't the village's pet gardener, still playing in the dirt, boatman, I suppose it's better than playing thief in the night." Quote, his friends snickered. Choi Sang froze, his back ramrod straight, but he did not look up. He simply continued pulling a weed, his knuckles white. "You were sitting on a bench, mending a tear in a practice tunic, and every muscle in your body went taut. The old fire, the familiar blinding rage, roared to life in your gut. Your hands clenched into fists, the needle and thread forgotten. The urge to launch yourself off the bench, to grab Quan by his silken collar and introduce his arrogant face to the dirt he was mocking, was so powerful it made your teeth ache. You could almost feel the satisfying crunch of his nose. But then, another image superimposed itself over the red haze of your anger. Park Yong, crouching to speak to a small, frightened boy. The elder's weary, wise face in the candlelight. Shin Mamang used its light to see more clearly, not just its heat to burn. Name us. You took a breath. And another. You forced your hands to unclench. You stood up, not with a sudden leap, but with a slow, deliberate grace. You folded your tunic neatly and placed it on the bench. Then you walked toward Quan, your steps measured and silent. You didn't run, you didn't stalk. You simply approached. Quan and his friends only noticed you when you were a few feet away. Their laughter died in their throats. They knew your reputation. They saw the storm in your eyes, and they braced for the inevitable explosion. You stopped directly in front of Quan, so close you could smell the expensive perfume he wore. You did not raise your voice. You did not need to. Quan, you said, your voice a low, chilling whisper. This man is repaying a debt to the village. His work here is a matter of honor. You let your gaze drift pointedly to his soft, unmarked hands, a concept with which you seem unfamiliar. Quote, Quan's face flushed a blotchy red. How dare you? I dare, you interrupted, your voice still a quiet hiss, because unlike you, I have seen what real struggle looks like. And unlike you, I know the difference between a man paying for a mistake and a boy who has never paid for anything in his life. You took a half step closer, invading his personal space, forcing him to crane his neck back to meet your gaze. This garden is a place of learning and of mending. Your presence here is doing neither. You are polluting the air. Leave. It was not a request. It was a command, backed by a lifetime of barely restrained violence he could feel radiating from you like heat from a forge. His friends began to shuffle their feet nervously, backing away. Quan, for all his bluster, was a coward. He searched your face for a sign of weakness, a flicker of doubt, and found none. He saw only a terrifying, cold certainty. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. With a pathetic attempt at a sneer that didn't quite hide the tremor in his lip, he spun on his heel. This place is boring anyway, he muttered, and he and his friends practically scurried out of the courtyard. You stood there for a long moment, your heart hammering against your ribs, the adrenaline singing in your veins. You had won. You had defended Choi Sang, and you hadn't thrown a single punch. You had used your anger not as a club, but as a finely honed blade, making your point with a few precise cuts. You turned. Park Yong was standing by the well, watching you, a look of immense pride and relief on his face. Choi Sang was looking up at you from the ground, his expression one of stunned, profound gratitude. In that moment, the three of you were no longer a victim and his rescuers. You were three people bound by a shared history, standing together in a garden you had all, in your own ways, helped to heal. That evening, long after Choi Sang had gone home, you and Park Yong sat on the bench, sharing a small sack of roasted chestnuts. The silence between you was comfortable, filled with the day's unspoken understanding. I almost lost it, Yong, you confessed, peeling the shell from a warm nut. I wanted to hurt him. Quote, I know, he said, his voice gentle. I saw it. I saw the moment you chose a different path. It was like watching a master dancer decide against a wild leap in favor of a single, perfect, powerful stance. It was more impressive than any fight. You smiled, a true, unburdened smile. And you, with Merchant Go. I thought you were going to offer to weed his garden for a month, just to keep the peace. Quote, he laughed, the sound warm in the twilight. The old me would have, but the old me didn't understand that some weeds need to be pulled up by the root, firmly and for all to see. He grew serious again, looking at you with deep affection. We've changed, haven't we? This whole terrible night, it broke something open in both of us. Or maybe, you offered, looking around the peaceful courtyard, it helped us grow into the people we were supposed to be all along. Your friendship had always been a given, a steady landmark in the landscape of your life. But now it felt different, deeper. It had been tested by fire and flood. and had not only survived, but had been forged into something stronger, tempered by a shared understanding of failure, forgiveness, and the quiet, difficult work of mending. As if summoned by your thoughts, a small figure appeared at the entrance to the courtyard, walking slowly, holding her father's hand. It was Minjun. She was pale and thin, but she was on her feet, her dark eyes wide as she took in the world again. Choi Sang led her to the new chrysanthemum bed, his face alight with a love so fierce it was almost painful to see. "Look, little flower," he murmured, his voice thick. "I planted these, for the garden, or for you." Minjun reached out a small, hesitant hand and touched a bright yellow petal. Then, her eyes found you and Park Young sitting on the bench. She whispered something to her father. He nodded, and she slowly walked toward you. She stopped a few feet away, a shy smile on her face. In her hand, she held a single, perfect chrysanthemum she must have plucked. She held it out to you. "For the dancer," she said, her voice small but clear. You reached out and took the flower, your fingers brushing against hers. Your throat felt tight. It was a simple gift, a mirror of one she had given you long ago, but this one was weighted with the cost of her father's desperation, the price of the elder's wisdom, the labor of her father's hands, and the entire, painful, beautiful lesson of the past month. It was a flower of forgiveness, a blossom of gratitude, a symbol of a community that had chosen to heal instead of break. You looked from the flower in your hand to your cousin's smiling face, and you knew, with a certainty that settled in your very soul, that this was the truest meaning of growth. It was the ability to stand in a garden, born of a terrible mistake, and accept a simple gift with a full and understanding heart. You hold the chrysanthemum in your palm, its petals a delicate explosion of yellow against your skin, still grimy from the garden soil. The flower is impossibly light, yet it feels as though it holds the weight of the entire past month. It is the color of the lantern Park Young carried, the scent of the garden Choi Sang trampled, the shape of the hope he almost extinguished. It is a symbol, you realize, not of peace restored, but of peace earned. It is the physical proof of a lesson learned in the dark and paid for in the light of day. Choi Sang stands a few feet away, his daughter's small hand held tight in his own. He does not look at you, but at his daughter, his gaze a mixture of adoration and a profound, lingering sorrow for the fear he knows he caused her. His pride, the high stony wall he had built around himself, has been dismantled brick by brick, and in its place is a raw and fragile humility. You see him now, truly see him, and the image of the clumsy, desperate thief in the moonlight seems like a distorted reflection in troubled water. The real man stands before you, a father, weary and indebted, but whole. "Minjun," he says softly, his voice a low rumble. "We should let the dancer and her cousin rest. We have taken enough of their time." Quote. The words are simple, but they are layered with meaning. We have taken enough. Asterisks. It is an acknowledgement of the time you and Park Young spent in the garden, the time he took from the village's peace, the time his daughter almost lost. Before they can turn to leave, you find your voice. "Wait!" They both stop, Minjun looking at you with open curiosity, Choi Sang with a flicker of apprehension. You take a step toward them, the flower still held carefully in your hand. You crouch down slightly to speak to the child, but your words are for the father. "This is a beautiful flower, Minjun," you say, your voice softer than you intended. "It must have come from a very well-tended garden." A slow, painful flush creeps up Choi Sang's neck. He finally meets your gaze, and his eyes are clear, holding nothing but the stark, unvarnished truth of his remorse. I have tried to make it so," he says, his voice thick. "It is the least I can do." Quote, "You have done more than that," you reply, standing to your full height. The moment demands honesty, not the fiery, accusatory kind you had wielded that night, but a quieter, more difficult kind. "You have taught this village something it was beginning to forget." He looks confused, his brow furrowed. "I have taught them only that a desperate man is a dangerous one." "No," you say, and you feel Park Young's steady presence beside you, a silent affirmation. "You taught us to look closer, to see past the friendly greeting at the river and ask about the worry in the eyes. You taught us that a community is not just a group of people who trade in the same market. It is a promise. And we, many of us, were not holding up our end of it. You see the shock in his face, the disbelief that you, his pursuer, his captor, would offer him this strange absolution. He had prepared himself for a lifetime of averted gazes and whispered condemnations. He had not prepared himself for understanding. I was so angry with you that night, you confess, the words tasting strange and foreign now. My anger was a storm. It saw only a broken window and a thief. It didn't hear the words from my daughter. It didn't care. It wanted only to strike. You look at your own hands, remembering how they had itched to punish him. I thought my honesty was my greatest strength. But I see now that honesty without empathy is just a weapon, and I was ready to use it to destroy you. A single tear traces a path down Choi Sang's weathered cheek. He makes no move to wipe it away. And I would have deserved it, he whispers. What I did? The shame of it will be my shadow for the rest of my days. Quote, "A shadow proves there is light," Park Young says, his voice calm and clear as he steps forward. Your shame proves you have honor left to defend, Choi Sang SSI. A man without honor feels no shame. You are paying your debt. More than that, you are showing us all what it means to rebuild what you have broken. There is a lesson in that, too. A lesson more valuable than any book in that schoolhouse. Quote, "The three of you stand there, the air thick with the ghosts of what was and the fragile promise of what could be. This is the conversation that was impossible that night impossible in the elder's house, impossible even a week ago. It could only happen here, now, in the finished garden, with the evidence of his atonement all around you and the living, breathing proof of the village's compassion holding his hand. Go home to your family, Choi Sang," you say softly. "Your work here is done." He looks around the courtyard, at the neatly repaired window, at the thriving flower beds, at the new pine sapling standing sentinel. He has poured a month of his life into this small patch of earth. He has paid for his crime with sweat and soil, with aching muscles, and the quiet suffering of his pride. He has earned his release. He gives you a deep, formal bow, so low his forehead almost touches his knees. When he straightens up, the heaviest of the burdens seems to have lifted from his shoulders. He nods once to you, once to Park Young, and then, holding his daughter's hand as if she were the most precious treasure in the world, he walks away, not as a thief slinking into the shadows, but as a father taking his child home in the light of day. You watch them go until they are out of sight, then you sink back onto the bench, the chrysanthemum still in your hand. The setting sun paints the sky in bruised purples and soft oranges, the colors of a fading storm. "Justice," you say to the quiet air. "I thought I knew what it meant. I thought it was a scale, a crime on one side, a punishment on the other, balanced, simple." Park Young sits beside you, leaning back and stretching out his long legs. "And now? Now I see it's not a scale at all," you murmur, turning the flower over in your fingers. "It's a garden. It's messy and complicated. Sometimes you have to pull a weed out by the roots, and it leaves a hole that needs to be filled. Sometimes you have to prune a branch, even if it hurts the tree for a little while, so it can grow back stronger. And sometimes," you look at him, "you just have to have the patience to wait for a seed to sprout, even when the ground looks barren." Quote, you think of the magistrate's justice. If you had taken Choi Sang to him, he would have been put in the stocks for a day, a public humiliation, and then perhaps sentenced to a month of hard labor on a government road, far from his family. The scale would have been balanced, the crime would have been paid for, but the garden of the community would have been left with a gaping hole. Minjun might have perished without a physician. His wife would have been left destitute. The village would have lost a boatman and gained a burden. The punishment would have created more problems than it solved. It would have been the justice of a neat and tidy ledger, not the justice of a living, breathing community. The elder's justice, you continue, thinking aloud, it demanded more from everyone. It demanded Choi Sang face his shame every day, right here where everyone could see him. It demanded the village pay for a physician, forcing them to invest in a family they might have cast out. It demanded my anger give way to understanding. It demanded your optimism become action. It didn't just punish the offender. It called the entire community to its responsibility. It sought to heal the whole garden, not just remove the one blighted plant. Park Young nods, his expression serene. Because the blight was not just in Choi Sang, Siana. It was in all of us. His desperation was the symptom. Our collective inattention was the disease. We were not looking after our own. The elder knew that the only way to truly heal the village was to make us all part of the cure. Quote, you lean your head back, looking up at the darkening sky. A deep, bone-weary peace settles over you. The world no longer feels like a stage for you to perform upon, a place of sharp edges and simple conflicts. It feels infinitely more complex and therefore infinitely more precious. Every person is a story, and you had only ever been willing to read the cover. That night, Choi Sang's desperation had forced you to open the book, and inside you found a tale of fear and love that was far more compelling than the simple title of Thief. You had learned that judging a person on their single worst moment was like judging a whole day by its darkest hour just before the dawn. I think, you say slowly, the lesson crystallizing into a simple, shining truth in your mind. That strength isn't about the fire you possess. It's about the wisdom to know when to use it as a light, and when to use it as a forge, and when to simply let it be a warmth that others can gather around. Quote, you look at the chrysanthemum in your hand, a perfect, fragile star against the twilight. You had wanted to be a hero that night, the one who vanquished the darkness. But you had learned a harder, more important lesson. You weren't the hero of this story. Neither was Park Yong or the elder. The hero was the community itself, in all its flawed, messy, and compassionate glory. It was a community that, when faced with a choice between breaking one of its own or bending to help him, had chosen to bend. And in that act of bending, it had found a deeper, more resilient strength. It had learned, as you had learned, that the truest justice, the only justice that truly lasts, is the one that leaves a garden more beautiful than it was before. You and Park Yong sit in the shared, companionable silence for a few moments longer, the last of the roasted chestnuts gone, the warmth from them still a pleasant memory in your belly. The moon, now high and brilliant, seems to have washed the sky clean of every color, leaving only a canvas of deepest indigo and diamond-sharp stars. Finally, with a soft sigh that is not of sadness, but of a deep and subtle weariness, Park Yong rises from the bench. The night is late, he says, his voice a quiet murmur in the stillness. And tomorrow, the garden will need us. Quote, you nod, rising to your feet as well. Your limbs feel heavy, your muscles aching with a fatigue that goes far beyond the physical exertions of the night. It is the exhaustion that comes after a long fever has finally broken, leaving the body weak but the mind clear. You look at your cousin, his familiar face softened by the moonlight, and you feel a surge of gratitude so profound it leaves you breathless. He is your anchor, the calm harbor to your stormy seas. Without his quiet wisdom, you know your ship of anger would have crashed upon the rocks long ago. Rest well, Young, you say, the words feeling strangely inadequate for everything you want to convey. He simply smiles, a gesture that holds all the understanding you need. And you, Seon-ah, you have earned your peace tonight. He turns and walks away, his footsteps fading into the sleeping silence of the village. You are left alone in the courtyard, the chrysanthemum still held loosely in your hand. You look at it one last time, this small, bright piece of evidence from a long and difficult trial. Then, you too turn and begin the slow walk home. The journey through the village is unlike any you have taken before. The path is the same, worn into the earth by the passage of countless feet, including your own. The houses are the same, their thatched roofs silvered by the moonlight, their paper-screened windows dark and secretive. But you are different, and so the world feels different. The shadows cast by the gnarled plum trees and low-hanging eaves are no longer menacing pockets of ambush. They are simply places where the light has not yet reached, soft pools of rest in the moon's gentle glare. The whisper of the wind through the tall pines at the edge of the village no longer sounds like a judgment. It sounds like a lullaby. Your bare feet, usually so quick and light, ready for a dance or a chase, move with a slow, deliberate cadence. You feel the cool, packed earth beneath your soles, the occasional prickle of a stray stone, the soft dust that powders your ankles. You are not a hunter stalking his prey. You are not a guard on patrol. You are simply a woman walking home at the end of a very long day. A quiet satisfaction, deep and warm and unfamiliar, settles in your chest. It is not the triumphant, heart-pounding elation of winning a fight or perfectly executing a difficult dance. It is a peaceful, resonant feeling, the quiet hum of a well-strung instrument after the final note has been played. It is the feeling of having not just acted but understood. You reach the small, unassuming hut that you call home. It is tucked away at the edge of the village. modest and solitary, much like yourself. You slide the wooden door open, the familiar rasp of wood on wood, a comforting sound. The air inside is cool and still, smelling faintly of straw and the herbs you keep tied in a bundle by the hearth. You step inside, leaving the moonlit world behind, and for a moment you stand in the absolute darkness, letting your eyes adjust. With practiced movements, you find the flint and steel on a low shelf and strike a spark. The kindling catches, and you light a single tallow candle. A small, flickering flame pushes back the gloom, casting a warm, golden glow across the single room. The light dances over the familiar objects of your life. The neatly rolled sleeping mat in the corner, the few pieces of pottery on a wooden plank, the simple clothes hanging from a peg on the wall. It is a sparse existence, one you have always seen as a reflection of your own sharp, unadorned nature. But tonight, it does not feel sparse. It feels simple, peaceful, enough. Your gaze falls upon the chrysanthemum still in your hand. You cannot simply let it wilt. You find an old teacup, one with a small chip in the rim, and fill it with fresh water from the clay jug by the door. You carefully place the flower into the cup, its bright yellow head bobbing for a moment before settling. You set the cup on the small table beside your sleeping mat. In the wavering candlelight, it looks like a captured star, a small sun brought in from the night. It is a reminder, a promise, a lesson. You unroll your mat, the soft rustle of the straw, a final sigh from the day. You shed your outer clothes, the fabric smelling of dust and sweat, and the faint, green scent of crushed leaves. You pour some water into a basin and wash the grime of the day from your face and feet. The water is cold, and it shocks you into a deeper awareness of your own tired body. Every muscle seems to sing with a low, aching hum. You are exhausted, but it is a good exhaustion, the kind that comes from meaningful labor. You have not just worked in a garden today. You have worked on your own soul, tilling the hard-packed soil of your anger and planting something new. Finally, you lie down on the mat, pulling a thin cotton blanket over yourself. You blow out the candle, plunging the room back into darkness, but not for long. Through the single paper-screened window, the moonlight filters in, a soft, milky white rectangle painted across the wooden floor. It illuminates the room with a gentle, ethereal glow, turning the familiar into the beautiful. The dust motes dancing in the beam of light look like tiny, silent sprites. You close your eyes, expecting sleep to take you immediately, but your mind is still, quiet, and clear. The events of the night replay themselves, not as a chaotic storm, but as a series of distinct, meaningful tableaux. You see Choi Sang, not as a thief, but as a father, his face a mask of terror and love. You see the elder, not as a judge, an old man dispensing rules, but as a master gardener, tending to the health of his entire village. You see Park Young, not as a simple optimist, but as a man of profound strength, whose compassion is not a weakness but a sharpened tool. And you see yourself. You see the girl who ran on fire and fury, who hunted a man in the dark, so certain of her own righteousness. You do not cringe from this image of yourself. You look at her with a newfound compassion. She was doing the best she could with the tools she had. She just didn't know, yet, that a tool could be used for more than one purpose. The sounds of the night, which at the beginning of your patrol had been sources of alarm, now fade into a gentle, comforting hum. The distant chirp of a cricket is no longer a lonely sound, but a part of the night's steady rhythm. The rustle of the wind in the thatch roof above you is not a menacing whisper, but the soft breath of the world settling down to sleep. There are no sudden cracks, no desperate shouts, no pounding feet. There is only the vast, enveloping peace of a quiet night. You think of the community. Before, you had seen it as a collection of people to be tolerated, a necessary complication in your life. Now, you see it as something more. A web. Fragile in some places, strong in others, but interconnected. Choi Sang's desperation had torn a thread. Your anger had pulled it taut, almost to the breaking point. The elder's wisdom, Park Young's empathy, the village's eventual choice in the market, they were all acts of reweaving, of painstakingly repairing the delicate tapestry. You realize that you are not just a thread in that web. You are one of its weavers. The thought is no longer terrifying. It feels right. It feels like coming home to a place you never knew you belonged. The moonlight inches across the floor, its slow, serene progress. A silent clock marking the passage of the night. Your breathing deepens, your thoughts beginning to soften and blur at the edges, like watercolors bleeding into wet paper. The image of the chrysanthemum in the cup by your mat floats in your mind's eye, a beacon of yellow in the soft gray of approaching sleep. It is a symbol of a painful night that brought about an invaluable harvest. You had gone on patrol to catch a thief and protect your village's property. You had ended up finding a piece of your own humanity you never knew was missing. The world is more complicated, more painful, and more beautiful than your anger had ever allowed you to see. And in that complexity, you find a peace that is deeper and more profound than any simple victory could have provided. Your body grows heavy, sinking into the straw mat. The tension that has lived in your shoulders for as long as you can remember seems to melt away, draining into the earth beneath you. You are a dancer, and you know the feeling of a body perfectly in tune, every muscle poised and ready. This is different. This is the feeling of a body at rest, truly and completely. You embrace the tranquil atmosphere, the gentle moonlight, a soft blanket over you, the quiet hum of the night, a lullaby for a soul that has finally found its quiet center. And as you drift away on the slow, deep tide of slumber, your last conscious thought is not of anger or justice or even of the garden. It is a simple, grateful acknowledgement of the silence, a peaceful night's end,